Can everyone see the screen?
Yes, sir.
Okay. We have completed our discussion on relativistic electrodynamics, and our next goal will be to solve Maxwell's equation in a general setting. So, what do we mean by that? Because when we solve different problems in electrostatics or magnetostatics, uh, I mean, the charge density or the current density, which were the source of electric field and magnetic field, they were constant in time. So we need not worry about their time variation. But in a general setting, I mean, suppose you have a charge distribution uh, and the charge particles may be moving around. That means the charge particles are not located at a fixed location, they are moving around. So how do we calculate the electric field or the magnetic field? Okay, we know that if the electric field and magnetic field varies with time, they can give rise to electric field and magnetic field. So that is known to us. But for a general scenario where the charge particles are not fixed at a certain location, they are moving around. That means the charge density may vary. Also, the current density, because the charge particles may be moving at a different rate. There could be different flux of particles, so current density may also vary. So in such situation, how do we solve Maxwell's equation? Suppose you know the charge density, that means the distribution of charge in a certain volume of space, and we also know the motion of the charge particles, how they are moving around. Then if we are asked to calculate the electric field and magnetic field at a certain point nearby it, how do we calculate that? So to do that, we have to first start from the basic this Maxwell's equation, which we have already learned earlier. So um, my goal is to first, I mean, all these things that I am going to discuss today are, I think, uh, must have been discussed earlier in some other course, maybe in electrodynamics or some other course, because this is related to gauge transformation and you possibly know about it. So what are the Maxwell's equations? If you write down Maxwell's equations, so the Maxwell's equations are, this is rho over epsilon naught, and we have uh, divergence of B, which is 0, curl of E, this is Faraday's law, and the modified Ampere's law. So there are two different kind of source here. I mean, one is the charge density, you see, rho for electric field, and also the time variation of magnetic field. Similarly, for magnetic field, we have a source current density as a source, as well as the time variation of electric field. But remember, this rho can be a function of both space and time. In electrostatics, rho was just a function of space, rho r. But this time we can have a situation where rho is a function of r and t, and the so as the magnetic field, I mean, J can be also a function of r and t. So we want to write down Maxwell's equation in 4 dimension, which you have, I think, already done while writing them in tensor notation. But let me start from scratch. So the first step is to write down the same set of equations, I mean this 4 equation, in terms of, say, potential, the scalar potential and the vector potential. We know that phi and a, they actually are part of a 4 vector, right? For phi by c and a, they constitute a 4 vector, right? A mu, we know that this is 4 potential, right? 4 potential. So, and we already wrote the sum of the Maxwell's equations in terms of 4 potential. But let me just start from scratch. So where I want to first write down this 4 equation in terms of, say, scalar potential and vector potential separately, and then we shall combine them. So that is not difficult. I mean, because you know that the B is divergenceless. So this always holds. Divergence of B is 0. That means we can always write B equal to curl of A without thinking anything else. Where of course A is some vector field which we call vector potential, right? B equal to curl of A. That is because of the B is divergenceless. So, and A is called vector potential, right? This AX, AY, AZ are vector potential. This is vector potential. And irrespective of whether you are in electrostatics, magnetostatics, or electrodynamics, doesn't matter. This is always true, vector potential. And remember, when we were in electrostatics, we had curl of E equal to 0, right? It's a conservative field. Electrostatics, we have E dot dl along a closed path is 0, so that is curl of E equal to 0. And if curl of E equal to 0, we can then express E as a gradient of some scalar function, which we call scalar potential. So E equal to minus of grad phi, the way we defined potential, and the minus sign is basically conventional thing, the way you define it. So E equal to minus of grad phi. But here, when you look at this equation, this one, this is not 0, right? So this is non-zero. Curl of E equal to minus of del B del T. And since we already know that B is curl of A, so we can substitute it there in that equation. So curl of E will be minus of del del T curl of A. Earlier it was 0, so we need not think about that, but this time that is not the case. So this time we have to write this. This will be, you can write it also minus of curl. I mean, they are interchangeable, time derivative and space derivative, del A del T. So I can write curl of E plus del A del T equal to 0. That means curl of the vector field, which is not electric field, but electric field something plus something. I mean, time derivative of vector potential. Curl of a vector field. So you can imagine a vector field at each and every point in space. I mean, we have a quantity defined by the electric field plus the time derivative of the vector potential that constructs our field, and the curl of that field is 0, right? So then we can, and following the same I mean logic, that curl of gradient of a vector has to be 0 from vector calculus, we can write E plus, just like electrostatics, we have just another extra term here, del A del T. E plus del A del T should be minus of gradient of some scalar function phi, right? So which you call usually scalar potential. So then I can write E equal to minus of grad phi minus del A del T. So in electrodynamics, electric field is not given by only the scalar potential. That is, the gradient of phi is not sufficient to give you the electric field. You need to subtract another term, which is the time derivative of the vector potential, del A del T. So this is the electric field in terms of phi and A, and this is the magnetic field in terms of A. You don't require phi here. And if you take this expression of E and B and plug them back in the Maxwell's equation, so you can actually express all these equations in terms of simply A and phi. So that is why, and why we should do that. I mean, of course, one can stick to E and B and ignore phi and A. There is a particular advantage, because the electric field and magnetic field we already know that's a component of a tensor, right? But if you are dealing them as a vector, I mean, even as a tensor, so you need 6 numbers, right? Ex, Ey, Ez, and Bx, By, Vz, they are components of a second rank tensor. So you need 6 numbers to represent that tensor, right? Either you deal it as a tensor or separately electric field or magnetic field is vector, you need 6 numbers. Okay, you cannot I mean reduce that. But if you work with scalar potential and vector potential, you need to find out only 4 numbers, because scalar potential is a scalar function. You don't need to think about its components. So phi and A is a vector potential, so phi and A together you have 4 components, right? You need 4 numbers to represent the electromagnetic field. And if you want to use I mean either F mu nu or E and B, whether here we have E and B, not F mu nu, E and B, we need 6 numbers, 6 components. So I mean this has a certain advantage over E and B, because you just calculate phi and A, and then you have the relationship between electric field and A. So you take curl of A, that will give you the 3 components of magnetic field. And if you calculate gradient of phi and then add something like del A del T, you will get back the electric field. So that's why, I mean, this expression of Maxwell's equation in terms of phi and A is a little bit more advantageous. So if we substitute this and this in the Maxwell's equation, what do we get? Okay, that is straightforward. So we have what are the, so B, we have E equal to minus of gradient of phi minus del A del T, and B, of course, this is a vector equal to curl of A. So let us start from the Gauss's law. So if I put in place of E this expression over there, so we have a divergence of E equal to rho over epsilon naught. So if I substitute divergence of E is minus of grad phi minus del A del T equal to rho over epsilon naught. So that will give us Laplacian of the scalar function plus del T. I'm taking minus sign on the other side. Del T, and this is dot. So divergence of A equal to minus of rho by epsilon naught. So this is one equation, right? So if you look at this equation, this is in terms of phi and A, right? And this equation is very similar to, if you look at this equation, is very similar to Poisson's equation, right? If you remember Poisson's equation, we had Laplacian of phi equal to minus rho by epsilon naught. This extra term was not there, right? If you remember. So this is something coming from the coupling of basically E and B or phi and A. They're not independent in electrostatics. I mean, you can separately think about electric field and magnetic field. That's why that was possible. But this time it is not possible. We have this extra term over there. Similarly, if I substitute, say, let us take the modified Ampere's law, curl of B is equal to mu 0 J, and let us put E and B there, right? What is B? B is a curl of A, so I write curl of A equal to mu naught J plus mu naught epsilon naught del T is minus of grad phi minus del A del T, which we have obtained just a few minutes back. And you then simplify curl of A from vector calculus. You know that this is del of divergence of A minus Laplacian of the vector function A is equal to mu 0 J plus, okay, you can take it outside gradient because they are interchangeable. So I can write minus of grad mu 0 epsilon 0 del phi del T, and then mu 0 epsilon 0 should be there, this common term, double derivative of A in terms with respect to time, right? You can slightly rearrange the terms so that, okay, I'm rearranging them and writing it here. So it will look like Laplacian of A minus mu 0 epsilon 0. So I'm taking these two terms together, and there is certain region behind that. This will be clear in a few minutes. And then grad of divergence of A plus mu naught epsilon naught del phi del T, right? Yeah, equal to minus mu naught J. Now, if you compare this equation with the one that you solved in magnetostatics, you may remember there was an equation in terms of A, very similar to Poisson's equation with a short term on the right hand side. So Laplacian of A in electrostatics and magnetostatics, we had del square phi equal to minus rho by epsilon naught, and del square A is equal to minus mu naught J, right? These were the equation in electrostatics and magnetostatics. Here we have this equation, first equation, and this is the second one, right? But here, see, this equation looks quite ugly because it has a lot of term here, right? It's not only Laplacian of A. This term is extra here, and the whole of this is extra there. and it is not very easy to solve these two equations in a general setting. It's very difficult. How do you solve this? Okay, because earlier the problem was simple. Once you know the charge density, you can calculate scalar potential, you can take derivative and get electric field. Life was simple. You know charge density, you know the electric field. You know the current density, you know vector potential by solving these three equations. And once you get a vector potential, take a curl of a, get magnetic field. But this time it's not straightforward because of this this combined nature. You see, electric field is given by the gradient of phi as well as time derivative of vector potential A. So it is not sufficient to just know phi. You have to know as well. So solving both these equations are necessary together. So you have to solve both these equations in order to know phi and A. Then only you can get the information about electric field and magnetic field, and you have a complete idea of the electromagnetic field that you are talking about. Okay, so here comes the importance of gauge transformation. So why do we need gauge transformation? Just to make our life simple. And there is something called gauge freedom, which basically provides us this flexibility, so we can exploit that freedom. What is that freedom? You see, if you look, the electromagnetic field, in real life, what do you deal with? It's electric field and magnetic field, right, which you measure in laboratory. So I have a charge particle, there is some electric field surrounding it, and that applies some force on some charge particle. You can measure that directly and talk about the electric field or magnetic field. I have a current, you can measure the magnetic field. But that doesn't mean that scalar potential and vector potential have no real physical existence. They are just some mathematical abstract quantity. No, that's not my point. What I'm saying that phi and A are some physical quantities which we define for the sake of simplicity. The way we define scalar potential and vector potential has some amount of arbitrariness in that. How do you define scalar potential? If you remember that definition from electrostatics, you want to bring some charge from infinity to a particular point, and work done by that is called the potential, right? So this potential, either scalar potential or vector potential, both are important thing because they are connected to electric field and magnetic field. And once you know phi and A, you can calculate E and B. But they are something which is not direct. They are indirect things. E and B are more direct, and that doesn't mean that since it is indirect, I can just take whatever value I want. No, that's not my point. So what is gauge freedom? Okay, let us discuss that. So the gauge freedom allows us, as long as we are not altering the electric field and magnetic field, right? If we alter electric field and magnetic field, then of course things becomes this is not allowed, because if you just choose your potential in such a way that your electric field and magnetic field gets changed, then of course that is something unphysical, right? So we want to talk about gauge freedom first. What is gauge freedom? So this is some amount of freedom given to you, where suppose I have scalar potential and a vector potential, and say scalar potential phi, from which we obtain the electric field and magnetic field. But suppose we, for some reason, we want to have another set of potential, say some A prime, or say phi prime, right? And this can be obtained, of course, by mapping this potential to this in some ways, adding something, subtracting something, multiplying something, whatever you want to do. Okay, so suppose these potentials are obtained from this potential in such a way, so that is the freedom, in such a way that the resulting electric field and magnetic fields are not changed. So how do you get electric field and a magnetic field from the potential? Simply by taking curl of A, you get magnetic field, and taking the gradient of phi and adding minus delta del t to that will give you electric field. So if you do the same operation on the potential on this side and this side, you should get the same electric field and magnetic field, right? E and B, right? So we have the same relation, that is B equal to curl of A and E equal to minus of grad phi minus delta del t, and this operation will give you back the same electric field and magnetic field. right? So this much amount of freedom is given, because I mean, of course, potential is something important, but again, you have certain amount of freedom, right? So you can choose certain conditions. Suppose, if you remember the previous equation, so there are some terms, right, in this, which are extra as compared to electrostatics and magnetostatics, and those terms involves divergence of A, or some del phi del t, and things like that. So we can impose certain conditions on those quantities, right? So that, I mean, so that we have a new set of a vector potential and scalar potential, but that doesn't alter the electric field and magnetic field, right? So that is the most important condition. So what was the equation? Let me just write them once again. Laplacian of phi plus del t divergence of A, right? This is the first equation, right? Equal to minus of rho over epsilon. Of course, I'm not writing it here. Phi is a function of R and T. Scalar potential, vector potential is a function of R and T. This time, they are not only a function of space. They're a function of space and time. Rho is also a function of RT. So since I have to repeatedly write them, so I'm not writing them. So just assume that they are function of R and T. And Laplacian of A minus mu naught epsilon naught del of A del T minus grad and of divergence of A plus mu naught epsilon naught del phi dt. This is a scalar quantity. Gradient of that is a vector quantity, is equal to minus mu naught j. Now look at these terms, this one, or say this one. Okay, so how to simplify these two equations? As I told you, that the problem lies in the fact that these equations are not very simple, right? And if you want to solve this equation, so we want to get phi and A for any given charge distribution rho rt in space and time, and jrt in space and time. We want to solve, these are the given things, and we want to solve these two equations to obtain phi and A. That will give us E and B. So for our advantage, what we do is basically we can map A and phi to our choice. It can be any choice as long as it satisfies certain conditions. So what is that? Suppose I want to make, say, divergence of A equal to 0, for example. So okay, I will come to that later. Maybe let me start from the very beginning. So suppose I do something like that. So I have a vector potential which I don't like. Okay, so I want to use another vector potential. So let me call that A plus some alpha, or say lambda, whatever, beta, alpha. So this is something I have added to A. Okay, so it's new vector potential, right? And we have the vector scalar potential phi prime, say, which is say phi plus say some I have named it at alpha, so here I will call it beta. Okay, so I add some number to it and call it my scalar potential. Now, this is allowed, as I told you, the gauge freedom tells you this is allowed as long as you have the same electric field and magnetic field from them, right? So that means if I write magnetic field B, say B has to be same. So B should be equal to curl of A prime also, not only curl of A. It has to be equal to curl of A prime also. And this time A prime is curl of A plus alpha, A plus alpha, which is actually curl of A plus curl of alpha. Now you see this term over there, curl of alpha, right? Curl of A is B, and we are demanding that the curl of A prime also should be B. That means this quantity which we have added to A, curl of that quantity must be equal to 0. Right, so this is one condition where this requires that curl of this extra vector that we have added must be equal to 0. This has to be satisfied. Okay, what about the other one, electric field? Okay, next page. So what I wrote is that A prime equal to a plus alpha, and phi prime equal to phi plus beta. Now what I claimed that from B equal to curl of A prime, curl of A prime, we have curl of A plus curl of alpha, and this must be 0. Curl of alpha has to be 0. That is what I said earlier. And let us look at the condition that is required for beta. So if I look at the electric field also should remain same. If I use this mapping from phi and a to phi prime and a prime, so gradient of phi prime this time, and I'm writing this because I should get back the same electric field, right, and magnetic field, like this one. So if I put this phi minus gradient of, this is phi plus some arbitrary number beta which I have added. So I have to add according to my requirement, because del t a plus the vector alpha, right? And again, if we rearrange them, this will be minus of grad phi minus del a del t. This is the familiar quantity that we, this is something which electric field. So the extra baggage over there, which is minus of, minus, I'm taking common, grad beta plus del alpha del t. The extra baggage, this one must have to be 0. Then only we can say that okay, electric field and magnetic field has not changed. So if I write that, say grad of beta, again, so this is the condition on beta, grad of beta plus del of alpha del t. That means we can add alpha and beta according to our convenience, as long as curl of alpha is 0 and grad of beta plus del alpha del t is 0. Now, what does that mean? Let me just simplify it further a little bit. So if I write, if curl of alpha is 0, you see from this equation, just like curl of a vector quantity is 0. That means I can write alpha. Alpha is the gradient of some scalar function. Alpha is gradient of, say, let us call it psi prime. Okay, I can also put it in psi prime. Okay, you can write psi as well, psi prime. So this is the consequence of curl of alpha equal to 0. So if curl of alpha is 0, this extra vector which we added to the vector potential must be equal to the gradient of some scalar function. This is not scalar potential. Let us call it gauge potential. Okay, some potential. Gradient of that will give us this extra vector which you have added to vector potential, right? So this is coming from this. And now if I look at this equation, right, grad of beta plus del alpha del t. So let us write down this grad of beta plus del t, and now alpha is grad of psi prime. So let us write that this is grad of psi prime equal to 0. That means grad of beta, I can interchange the operators, grad of del psi prime del t equal to 0. That means grad operating on this scalar quantity beta plus the time derivative of the gauge potential del psi del t equal to 0. What it is saying, that this quantity gradient, spatial gradient, not the time, spatial gradient of this scalar number beta plus del psi prime del t is equal to 0. That means this is a constant in time. So of course not time, sorry, in space. So beta plus del psi prime del t is a constant, but not, it could be some function of, say, t. I'm writing kt, it's some function just to reduce the number of terms. So beta plus del psi prime del t is some function, say kt. Then what can we write? So beta is basically, then beta is, I can write a minus of del psi prime del t plus k of t. Or if I want to incorporate this k into psi, I can slightly remodify and write it del t of psi prime plus 0 to t. Let us call this kt prime and dt prime. The region was just to include, I do not want to write 2 or 3 terms. I just want to include this kt inside this psi prime. So psi prime plus something, psi prime, the time derivative of psi prime plus something, some time dependent function integrated over 0 to t, that will give me this one kt. Its time derivative on that will give you kt, right? So straightforward different. So then let us call this psi. This was the reason why I call it psi prime. I would like to call this as psi. This plus something is psi. This will be equal to minus of del psi del t. This is beta, right? And you see this is some arbitrary term over there. It's a time dependent thing. So if I take a grad of that, it will not change. Special gradient. If I see this gradient of psi prime and psi will be same. They are not different. So this is something depends on time, right? So this is del psi del t. So if I operate del on this function, that will give me the same thing. Grad of psi prime will be grad of psi. So that means this gauge freedom, by using gauge freedom, we have arrived at a conclusion that we can actually add a vector quantity to vector potential and a scalar quantity to the scalar potential without altering electric field and magnetic field in such a way, and that is by, so let me write down that a prime is a. So what we did, a এর সঙ্গে কি যোগ করতে হবে আমরা দেখেছি, this one, right? A plus grad psi, and I am writing grad psi just because grad psi and grad psi prime are same. And similarly the magnetic scalar potential phi, if you want to get that phi prime from phi, see, the only thing that is important is psi. This psi is called gauge potential. So you have to choose a gauge potential and take gradient of that, which is a vector function, to the vector potential, existing vector potential, and simultaneously, remember, simultaneously, you cannot do one without ignoring the other. Simultaneously you have to subtract the time derivative of that from the scalar potential, right? So this is called gauge transformation, general gauge transformation. So if you take any scalar function psi, which usually call gauge potential just because you are doing gauge transformation, so any scalar, arbitrary scalar potential, you take any, I mean, you don't need to think about that. So you need to take any scalar potential, take its gradient, add it to the vector potential, and simultaneously subtract the time derivative of that function from the scalar potential. Vector potential, you add grad psi, at the same time you subtract del psi del t from the scalar potential. That will not change the electric field and magnetic field. So even we have added something to A and phi, it is not going to affect the physical quantities like electric field and magnetic field, right? See, this is called a gauge transformation, and we shall exploit this freedom. So this is the freedom, right? This is the freedom, gauge freedom. We shall exploit this freedom to simplify our equation so that the solutions become easier. So let us first talk about the Coulomb gauge, which is the gauge, simplest gauge that one can think about. So Coulomb gauge, so what is Coulomb gauge? Okay, let me write it down here. The Coulomb gauge, okay, let me just first write down the equation once again, otherwise it will not be clear. So what was the equation in terms of phi and a? Laplacian of phi plus del t of divergence of the vector potential equal to minus of rho by epsilon naught. And the other one was Laplacian of the vector potential minus mu naught epsilon naught, second derivative, minus grad of divergence of A plus mu naught epsilon naught del phi del t equal to minus mu naught j. Again, I remind you, rho and j are function of r and t, phi and a are also function of r and t. Okay, these are constant. Mu naught epsilon naught is constant. So we, our job is to solve these two equations, and we want to use gauge freedom to simplify these two equations. So I already told you that the gauge freedom tells us that we can choose our scalar potential and vector potential in such a way so we can have a prime equal to a plus grad psi, and simultaneously phi prime equal to phi minus del psi del t in our equation. So these are the gauge transformation. This will give us back the same electric field and magnetic field. We don't need to worry about, right? And we shall use this. So we shall choose our psi in such a way, that is the I mean that is a particular gauge. You can define any gauge you like. So there is some conventional gauge I'm talking about. So you can choose any psi which will help you. What do I mean by that? Okay, I can choose any psi. Suppose I choose my psi in such a way that this becomes 0, right? I choose my psi in such a way that divergence of A equal to 0. If divergence of A equal to 0, you see where, so Coulomb gauge is basically this. So in Coulomb gauge, in Coulomb gauge, and why we are doing that, you can see a divergence of A is here, divergence A is also here. So maybe it can help us to reduce the, I mean, terms a little bit and simplify the situation further. So in Coulomb gauge, the chosen condition is this. Now you see, this is not something unique thing. I mean, in Coulomb gauge, this is something unique. I mean, of course, but of course you can impose any other condition. So this is, we choose our psi in such a way that this is true, divergence of equal to 0. So as long as your, I mean, psi is chosen in such a way that that is not altering E and B, and there is no harm in doing that. So that is the idea of gauge transformation. Now you see, if I plug in this condition in the first equation, what do you get? This is our familiar Poisson equation, right, which you have solved earlier in electrostatics. So Laplacian of phi equal to minus rho by epsilon naught. This can be solved in spherical coordinates, Cartesian coordinates, cylindrical coordinates. In many situations, there are standard mathematical techniques to solve this equation, and for any kind of charge distribution, you can solve this. Specifically for symmetric ones, this is very easier. For asymmetric ones, of course, you have to work harder. Maybe sometimes you need numerical methods, but these are solvables, right? So given this equation, you can easily calculate phi. The Green's function solution for this equation is well known. So phi as a function of, say, r, and t, how in Green's function method you write it this way: 1 over 4 pi epsilon naught, then rho r prime t, this is source, and then you have this function 1 over r minus r prime, where r prime are the source coordinate, r is the field point where you are calculating the potential, right, at time t, and r prime are the, so basically this picture is like this: you have some charge distribution over there and you want to calculate the field here. So this is r, and the coordinate of all these source points are r prime, and these are r minus r prime, right? So these are the this is the expression for scalar potential, and dqr prime, or you can write dv prime simply, dqr prime or dv prime. So this is the scalar potential. Now you see, then you don't need to work any harder than solving Poisson equation, which is already known from electrostatics. But look at the second equation. The second equation, even you have a little bit easy. I mean, you get some advantage in solving the first equation to calculate phi. The second equation still remains quite complicated, because even if you put divergence of A equal to 0 in this equation, what you have is basically Laplacian of A minus mu naught epsilon naught, and the second derivative, time derivative of this, we have divergence of is 0, so minus of mu naught epsilon naught, and then grad of del phi del t equal to minus mu naught j. So one may think that maybe I have solved phi, so maybe you can calculate electric field, but no, this time it is not possible. Electrostatics is possible. You can take the gradient of phi and get electric field, but this time it is not possible, because in order to calculate electric field, you need both phi and A. So you have to find phi by solving this equation by Green's function method, and then you simultaneously need the time derivative of A, and that is only possible if you can solve this equation. And this equation still remains quite complicated. You cannot solve it very easily. Solving first equation is easy, but second equation is not easy. Further, there is another disadvantage of Coulomb gauge. What is that? You see, I mean, it is straightforward that to see that this violates causality, because this equation tells you, this solution tells you, if you alter the charge density by some means, it will instantaneously affect the scalar potential, and via scalar potential it can also affect the electric field. So I mean, this is an action at a distance problem. So that means you can basically, you don't need to have a finite speed of light. You can change the source term here, and the derived quantity like scalar potential or the electric field can be affected instantaneously, which actually is against special relativity. That's why this Coulomb gauge, although it has certain advantage in solving the first equation, but it is not very, not favorable for this region, because it violates causality and against the special theory of relativity. Again, as I told you, there is no hard and fast thing. You can choose any gauge of your choice as long as these two conditions are satisfied. So I have chosen here the psi in such a way so that divergence of A is 0. Now, the most conventional gauge which is used in electrodynamics or in many other branches, but because this kind of equation are also solved in gravity, and okay, I will come to that later. New page. Okay, so in Lorentz gauge, again, what are the equations? Let me remind you. This was our first equation, divergence of A equal to minus of this. And the second equation was minus so what is Lorentz gauge? So Lorentz gauge is a bit, it's just applied, the gauge is a bit clever, because you see earlier when we made the divergence of A 0, this equation was simpler, but this equation was ugly. So this time it starts from the second equation. So let us make this term 0. So if I want to make this term 0, the condition that is required is divergence of A. So Lorentz gauge is divergence of A is equal to, say, for example, minus mu naught epsilon naught del phi del t, right? This is the condition that we want to impose, right? So this is our preferred gauge condition. So what is the requirement? If we require this, then we have to choose psi, the gauge potential, in such a way that this is satisfied. And if you remember how A and phi are related to the gauge potential, right? So A and phi, the relationship between A and phi has to be like this, and that is the basis of our choice of psi, the gauge potential. Psi has to be chosen in such a way that this has to be satisfied. And as soon as you demand this condition, you see from the second equation that this entire term vanishes. So what we are left with from the second equation is, okay, I'm writing the second equation first, Laplacian of A minus mu naught epsilon naught equal to minus of mu 0 j. What about the first equation? If you see, if I put divergence of A equal to minus mu naught epsilon del phi del t, what do we get? We get Laplacian of phi minus mu naught epsilon naught equal to, you see there is nice symmetry in the two equations, right? For phi and a, you can clearly see it, and both of them are representing two wave equations. You see, phi is a wave, a is a wave, but of course they are inhomogeneous equation. We have some source term over there on the right hand side. If you compare with the wave equation for electric field and magnetic field in vacuum, there were no terms on the right hand side, right? So specifically when we're talking about vacuum, if you have considered conductor or dielectric, that's a different scenario. But E and V, just like electric field and magnetic field represent waves, plane waves, we can see that phi and A both are giving us similar equation with some source term like charge density and current density on the right hand side. So these two inhomogeneous equation can be further written in this compact way, where you write box square of phi. This is called D'Alembertian. So minus of rho RT. I'm writing RT because now we do not have many terms, so I'm just writing that. It was RT also earlier. And box square of A RT equal to minus of mu 0 J RT. If you remember, I have already written this equation in terms of mu nu, right? What was that equation? If you remember, del mu. So here box square is just box square is this minus 1 by c square. This is box square, right? We have already written this del mu a nu equal to mu 0 j nu. So you can, we have actually four equations, three components of vector potential and one equation for scalar potential. You can combine them all together in this equation, where a nu is the 4 potential, j nu is the 4 current density, and del mu we know that covariant and contravariant, that will be 1 by c square del t square minus del square. So you can write them in a compact form. That is fine. Now let us discuss about the advantage of this particular gauge over Coulomb gauge or any other gauge. You can clearly see that it offers certain advantage. One advantage is that it is independent of any coordinate system, right? Because here the space and time are treated in the same footing. You can see, right, time derivative as well as space derivative. And we already know that covariant and contravariant derivative, they contain both time derivative and space derivative. So of course they will be invariant. If we go from one frame to other, they're not going to change. And the second thing, okay, I should also show that I have not talked about the gauge potential. What is the gauge potential? Psi. Let us look at that equation for gauge potential. What is that? No. Oh. So what was the equation for a gauge potential? I just want to, what was the gauge condition? If you remember, what was the gauge condition? The gauge condition, Lorentz gauge condition was this. Lorentz gauge condition. What was the Lorentz gauge condition? Lorentz gauge condition was divergence of A equal to minus of mu naught epsilon naught del phi del t. So I'm bringing that on the left hand side, so that mu naught epsilon naught del phi del t equal to 0. So in Coulomb gauge, we chose divergence of A equal to 0. In Lorentz gauge, we choose divergence of A plus mu naught epsilon naught del phi del t equal to 0. So psi is chosen in such a way that this condition holds. And this can be also written in terms of mu covariant derivative del mu A mu equal to 0. So same thing written in a different notation. And you see, if I now consider this equation and use the gauge transformation. So what was the gauge transformation? A prime was equal to A plus gradient of psi. The psi is chosen based on this criteria, and phi prime equal to phi minus del psi del t. Let us put them here in this equation. So what do we get? If we put them here, we get divergence of A plus grad psi plus mu naught epsilon naught del t phi minus del psi del t equal to 0. This is the Lorentz gauge condition. Now if I separate the terms, I have divergence of A plus mu naught epsilon naught del phi del t plus, this will be Laplacian of psi minus mu naught epsilon naught del square psi del t square equal to 0. Now from the gauge condition, this term is already 0. That is the criteria, right? This is 0. So we have an equation for the gauge potential, which is again nothing but the wave equation. And that's the beauty of Lorentz gauge. You see each and every quantity involved here, either it be scalar potential or be the vector potential. So scalar potential, vector potential, electric field, magnetic field, gauge potential, everything is a wave, right? All of them satisfy wave equation. So that's the beauty of Lorentz gauge. So it's not only commensurate with special relativity, but since all the quantities are waves, so it is a, I think, something which is quite satisfying. And I think our next goal will be using this gauge, we have to solve the Maxwell's equations, right? So solutions, finding the solutions of Maxwell's equation is our next goal. And it is, I should tell you that it's not a very trivial task, because in a given arbitrary scenario where charge density and current density can vary arbitrarily, it is not so easy. Okay, so we will see why, because the variation of charge and current could be anything, right? So in electrostatics we had no time variation, in magnetostatics we have no time variation. So that's why it was comparatively easier. I'm not saying that it is easy in each and every situation. It was comparatively easier. This time it is going to be a bit difficult, but anyway, that is doable in many situation, ideal situation. And we shall discuss the first. I already told you the Green's function method is the conventional way of solving this inhomogeneous Maxwell's equations. So we are going to solve the inhomogeneous equations of Maxwell's by using Green's function method in the next class. And Green's function method, I think it is a conventional method used in many other topics of physics, because whenever you have some inhomogeneous wave equation, this kind of equation, and which are quite common in different branches of physics, this method is used to solve for this variable like phi and a. So we shall do that in the next class, and I stop here. If you have any question. আচ্ছা, আরেকটা ব্যাপার, আমি কালকে একটা অ্যাডমিনিস্ট্রেটিভ কাজের জন্য থাকবো না। তো কালকে ক্লাসটা হবে না, আমাদের ফ্রাইডে, নেক্সট ক্লাস হবে ফ্রাইডে। আর আমি এখনো পরীক্ষার নোটিশটা দিইনি তোমাদের, যেটা আমার অলরেডি আলোচনা হয়েছে তোমাদের সঙ্গে লাস্ট ক্লাসে, যে 16th, তাহলে 16th আমাদের টাইম একই হবে 1:30 to 2, মানে অ্যাট মোস্ট ম্যাক্সিমাম যেটা বলেছিলাম 20 মিনিট ওই একই। আমি এটা আবার হয়তো মেনশন করছি না, জাস্ট ডেটটা সবাইকে জানিয়ে দিও। 16 তারিখ 20 মিনিট প্লাস 5 মিনিট, in case of slow internet another 5 minutes, মানে maximum next class is Friday গ্রিন আলোচনা করবো। আর আমি গ্রিন ফাংশন মেথড যদি কেউ দেখতে চাও, যেটা ম্যাক্স কি জ্যাকসনের যেটা পুরনো এডিশন 62 এডিশন, সেটাতে ইলাবোরেটলি ডিসকাস করা আছে গ্রিন ফাংশন মেথডটা ভালো হয়। ঠিক আছে, তাহলে নেক্সট ক্লাস